Hello everyone. In this video I will show you how you can construct histograms for continuous data. For the sake of this example, I have a file open already, and I'm going to be focusing on the variable called price. Now, although the price of a house has to be rounded eventually to the nearest cent, you'll agree that there's such a variety of different prices that we can treat it as being continuous. The first way to construct a histogram is to let Excel do it for us. It's the simplest and most efficient way of doing it. First thing we'll do is to select the data for the different values of price. So I'm selecting all of the data in the first column, and I will go directly to Insert. Now when you go to Insert, all of the different options to insert graphs are there. You can probably tell histogram is right here in the middle where the bars are colliding with one another, an indication that we're talking about a continuous variable. If it doesn't appear by default on your version of Excel, you can also go through recommended charts and look at all the charts that are supplied. Down the list, you will find histogram. Now you see, Excel has already done the job of collecting the data, putting it into classes, and producing an output for us. So we can say, OK. So here is our chart. Very efficient, very little work for us to do here. Excel has created by default intervals that are of equal sizes, has tallied the frequency for each one. If you want to see the tally rather than to read it off the graph, you can right-click anywhere on the boxes that are appearing and ask to add data labels. Now you can see that the number of houses that fit into each price interval has been added in. Okay. Something that you may want to correct or that you may be disappointed about is the way that Excel decided to divide the groups. The price divisions and the price classes here are kind of weird. 189,000 to 261,000 is the first group. Kind of a weird choice of width there. There's also an empty group, as you can see on the right-hand side. So if you're disappointed with these choices and decide to create your own histogram, then here is your second option. I'm just going to go back up to the top. Second option is a bit more trouble, a bit more work, because you have to have looked at the data first, analyzed it somewhat to find the min, the max, and perhaps how you want to divide the groups themselves. That's where this column right here comes into play. See, I've created upper bounds for my classes. So I've decided to create groups that are of width $50,000. I've indicated to Excel where I want the right-hand bounds to be located. So now I will go to Data and select the Data Analysis Toolpack, and within the options there is one where we can choose to create a histogram for ourselves. So click OK. Now the input range is where the data is, so the quantitative variable where it has its data itself. So that's in the first column, column A. Second option is the bin range. So where are the right-hand extremities of the classes that you want to create? And that's why we have to create them in the first hand before even going into the data analysis toolpack. Okay, so that's the troublesome part. It's having to decide on our own the divisions that we want to make. I've incorporated the titles when I selected the data, so I want to click on Labels. And in terms of output, I want the chart output, which is the histogram itself. And then we'll click on OK. Your first reaction, if you've attended all of your classes and understand what a quantitative continuous variable is, should be to say, well, this graph is wrong. And you would be right to say that, because right now this is a bar chart and not a histogram. The fact that we have continuous data means that the bars should be attached to one another with no gap between them. So the first thing that we'll correct is to right-click on any of the boxes and go to Format Data Series, where we will remove the gap width. So already this is much better, as we actually have a histogram now. There are other improvements that you can make very easily. So those of you who are artistic and want to change the color, you can even have colors that are different for each box. You can create an outline for each of the boxes so that the color is not kind of molded or melted into one another as it is here. But essentially you have a pretty good representation of the distribution of prices now. You see that there's a few prices on the right-hand extremity that kind of stick out like a sore thumb. You can see the distribution is not perfectly symmetric. And one of the other advantages, or the side advantages, of using the data analysis toolpack is that the toolpack has, in addition to the graph, has produced a frequency table for you. So I would say that's almost more important than the graph itself. So you can manipulate the data now if you want. You can see which class is the modal class, and you may want to turn numbers into percentages, so relative frequencies. You can find cumulative relative frequencies. So a few more plus values, I would say, compared to letting Excel do the histogram.